So we're getting this started. I'm very excited to be back at what I call the Culture Fest. Future of Food has really taken over the conversation here at South by, especially this is my 10th year now. I can't believe that. I moved to Austin about 3 years ago. And Austin, as one of the CPG capitals of the country and the world, is really seeing an influx of not only great young startups and companies, but also investors in conversations like these. So I'm really thrilled to be joined with this amazing group of panelists, startup founders, investors, to talk about what it means to save our bodies and our climate in the coming months and years. The packaged food industry is the consumer packaged food industry is set to grow into an $8.4 trillion industry in the next few years. 4.2 of that is processed packaged foods, many of the foods that we make here, but we're looking to change both the way that they're made, grown, distributed, and really the way that they're thought out. The U.S. alone, it covers about over 1 trillion, or over 1/4 of the processed packaged food that's developed globally. Over 30% of the impact of these products can be attributed to climate degradation, and I really wanted to talk about how the change in growth in the pet foods market and new ways to grow some of our packaged food out of waterways such as oceans and seas, and also how consumer apps can impact the way that we see food and the many problems that have proliferated, especially over the last 3 years, as things like consumers and COVID have shown 54% increase in online grocery store orders and the need for packaged, shelf-stable foods. And so I'm happy to dive into this conversation here. We're going to start with Sarah and sort of make our way for quick introductions and then jump into the questions.
Sure, I'm Sarah Brand. I'm the founding general partner of a venture capital firm called True Wealth Ventures. It's me and another woman, Carrie Rupp, who are the GPs, and we're both based in Austin, Texas, and we invest across the United States in exclusively women-led companies that are improving environmental or human health. So our investment thesis actually doesn't have food as like a focus vertical, but we end up investing in food and related things because of either their health or environmental impacts.
Amazing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Carlson, the founder and CEO of Jiminy's. Jiminy's, we make sustainable dog food. What makes it sustainable? Well, we substitute the traditional animal protein, so think cow or chicken, with insect protein. Yep, insect protein. It is delicious, nutritious, sustainable, humane, and hypoallergenic.
I'm Bree Warner, and I almost ate the Jiminy's this morning upstairs because I thought it was for people. Went right in my mouth. It actually wasn't that bad.
It won't hurt you.
No, it won't hurt me. So I'm the CEO of Atlantic Sea Farms. We're a vertically integrated kelp company based in Maine. We produce over 85% of the line-grown seaweed in the United States, working with fishermen to diversify their income in the face of climate change by growing the most sustainable food on the planet.
Hi, I'm Claire Siegel, co-founder and CEO of Flourish. Flourish helps women break the diet cycle and sustain healthy habits through expert counseling, accountability, and community support.
Thank you for those introductions. And one thing I want to say is True Wealth Ventures actually and Sarah have invested in all three of these companies. And before we really get into sort of what we think about the future of consumption and saving our bodies and planets, I really wanted to talk a little bit about fundraising and investing in sort of the challenges and opportunities in the market right now for investing in women and in impact in food. So Sarah, you wanted to start that. I know there's several things that we can go in, especially as tides change here, but I wanted to really start by talking about investment first before we talk more about the scale and opportunities.
Sure, yes. There's some good numbers and bad numbers here to share. So I guess I will share that the reason we started True Wealth Ventures was to exclusively invest in women entrepreneurs because there are so few women entrepreneurs getting the venture capital dollars today. And 2022 it was 1.9%, just to give you a sense. It's really low, and it's been hovering around that 2% for the last decade, like as long as this has been tracked. despite the fact that there's study after study showing that women founders actually outperform by quite a bit financially. And so that's a whole different panel of like the irrational behavior in the venture capital community and why there's not more dollars flowing to women founders. But we are flowing those dollars there. But when we closed our first fund in January 2018, it was just under $20 million. It was the largest venture capital fund ever raised with an explicit gender diversity investment strategy. So that's like an accolade, yeah, that I'm sort of proud of in some ways, but I'm sad. Okay, thank you. But it just really shows you how nascent this market is, because 20 million is very small in the venture capital world. Now we have a second fund, $35 million fund we closed middle of last year, but it's just a tremendous opportunity. And besides just the financial outperformance that women founders see across all the markets in which they're playing in, we really see a bigger, even outsized opportunity in food in particular. Women are making 85% of all consumer purchase decisions. They're the ones that are primarily at the grocery store deciding what to buy, and the home purchases, remodels, all the consumer goods within the home. So they really have this advantaged insight into what products, what solutions are out there, when what aren't, and which ones are working well, which ones are packaged like crap, like whatever. They just see what's there, what's not there, and so they have an advantaged opportunity to come up with better solutions. So that's another reason why we focus on women and in these particular markets in which we do. Oh, and I guess I should also say they're making 80% of all healthcare decisions, which really ties into food, obviously, for themselves, for their children, for their spouses often, for their aging parents-in-law. So they really have an advantage.
And how many portfolio companies do you have now?
We have 16 now. Yep.
And for the panelists, for the founders, if we can just get a little bit of insight around how much you've raised and sort of what's been your challenges or some of your breakthroughs as you've worked on scaling pet food and scaling kelp and scaling consumer apps. And I know that you all are based sort of across the country and in Berkeley. Then we have Maine, and I know, Claire, you're in Houston as well, so Austin. So we're sort of hitting each corner of the country here. I want to really understand how it's been in terms of your experiences and sort of breakthroughs in fundraising.
Okay. Well, we have had to raise quite a bit of money. When we first started, there was not a lot of research that had been done on the dogs. We're feeding them insect protein, and so we needed to do the science behind it to prove out the digestibility and the utility. So that meant a lot of investment up front, and so we had to get investors to invest in us based on an idea, which is always a little bit more difficult. But having said that, there were enough people that really believed in what we were doing. It really is a game changer as far as the amount of resources that are required. And I've raised over $6 million to date. It's all been done through convertible notes and safes, and at some point here in the near future, we are going to be raising a Series A.
So everybody knows how to use kelp, and everyone's familiar with it, so it's super easy. So what we're doing is, when I took over as CEO in 2018, the entire country, in the entire Western Hemisphere, produced around 30,000 pounds of line-grown kelp. But Americans eat a whole lot of seaweed, whether that be in the form of seaweed snacks, that bright green seaweed salad in it, that, just FYI, kelp isn't that color. That's all the stuff that's in Mountain Dew. That makes it look like that. So if you're eating it, know what you're eating. But it is all imported from Asia, and some areas better than others. Korea produces beautiful, healthy, clean product. China plants a lot of it in sewage outflow areas. So we had this sort of amazing landscape to work with, where we in Maine have 4,000 plus lobster license holders in the state. The Gulf of Maine is warming faster than 99% of oceans in the world, and we are on the front lines
of some of the most dramatic climate change impacts that anybody is seeing on planet Earth. So for this fishery, which is so central to who we are in the state of Maine, that is still continuing to do well, but will virtually disappear in the next 20 years, and not from overfishing, but because the lobster larvae will not reproduce at the same rate that they are now as the water warms so quickly and so dramatically, we saw an opportunity to invest in the people that are working on the ocean, 4,000 of them, that have the boats, that aren't fishing in the winter, to grow something that Americans clearly wanted and could not get from here and could not trust the sourcing or traceability. But also in the 16 aisles of the grocery store, seaweed is in a quarter of one. And so we have 15 and a half aisles to conquer with line-grown seaweed from the United States. And so we have this incredible workforce, an incredible market opportunity, and a clean, cold water in which to do it. So the opportunity has always been clear to investors. The risk, however, is basically, on an idea of saying, like, guys, we're going to penetrate this market of 15 and a half aisles that nobody's ever seen before. And True Wealth was really behind what we were doing from the very beginning. They led our first round and has been in every consecutive round. We've raised $7 million. Now we will be launching a $9 million price round in the next few months. We're completely vertically integrated, and I think that's been something that's really hard for a lot of investors. And True Wealth's thesis around investing in women is one part of what they do. The other part is investing in system businesses. I just got here from Expo West at 2 a.m. last night from LA, where all of the food businesses are right now. 98% of them have absolutely no idea where their food is coming from. They don't touch it. They don't produce it. They don't know any of the farmers. They order from an ingredient panel. They put a really cute Instagram pink emblem on it. They talk about how sustainable they are, and then they sell it for $50 million. We grow the seeds. We manage the farms. We produce everything we do. We run the trucks. That is so hard for investors to understand. They want to see this hockey stick, like, oh, cool, just slap a name on it. Why do you have 25 people and you still don't have enough? I'm like, well, we're driving, and we're farming, and we're producing seeds. So it's been really, actually, at first I thought it was a challenge, but I actually now see it as an opportunity 3 years in, because we get really great investors. People who actually want to change the world rather than just putting their name on something.
And even with a lot of that complexity, you still own a lot more of your value chain than most of the sort of Instagram viral
all of it.
CPG
for better or for worse.
I'm happy you really dove into that there. Just to extend beyond that and dealing with the challenges of investors, but also the consumers, right? As we think about your market being, you're in Whole Foods and many other stores now, and mostly in the U.S. and are you in Canada?
We're not in Canada yet. We're in over 2,500 stores, but we also are an ingredient supplier. So about 50% of our business is to other CPG brands using kelp. But the consumer, it's been not a battle, but again, I see it as an opportunity because we're the first.
Right.
We can sort of forge the path, but also set the tone of what we're supposed to be eating.
Right. Because a lot of the consumption, at least more public consumption and marketing of seaweed and seaweed byproducts have been, mostly in Asia, and so there's lots of opportunity in this region as well. So thank you for going into that and diving into your value chain there. Claire, if we could just talk about really changing the perception around consumers, not only within your team, but also sort of marking a lot of the focus for nutrition impacts through a lot of what you're doing and building right now.
Yeah, so the way I kind of describe, I guess, our thesis at Flourish and how we arrived at a differentiated nutrition solution in a very crowded market is realizing through my professional experience, my background, I'm a registered dietitian. I've counseled at this point hundreds, if not thousands of women on food, healthy habits, and their relationship with food. And my own personal experience, having started dieting for the first time at the age of 13 and really struggling with food and body image for 10 plus years. What I found in the market was that most nutrition-focused solutions when it comes to food decisions will really center around food information and education. So, calories, points, plans, data around food. And what we recognized, again, through personal and professional experience, was that food information alone does not really generate lasting behavior change when it comes to shifting consumer mindsets, perceptions, and choices around food. So at Flourish, through our team of experts, we really address everything else. We kind of go beyond just food information and education, which is really important, but really dig into the physiology, the psychology, the environmental, the social aspects that actually motivate our food choices long term. I often liken it to kind of the practice of behavioral economics that explores all the irrational ways that we behave around money. Food is the exact same way. We are not, as humans, often rational eaters, and we often beat ourselves up for not being that way. And really, Flourish kind of begs the question, like, okay, how can we really get to the root of why you may know what to do, but you're just not doing it, and how can we help you start doing it and doing it consistently and enjoyably as well?
I'm glad you brought that up, that humans, we really haven't been, we've really been irrational with our eating, and even more so irrational with the way we've fed our pets. The pet food industry is now surpassed $100 billion. I want to, and have you dive into why. You have a lot of great stats there. I don't want to jump into that, and I want to make sure that you sort of spotlight this opportunity here, and also the alignment and growth that we see in parallel with millennials and Gen Z with their diet decisions.
Well, most people don't realize, but 30% of the environmental impact of meat consumption in the US is due to our dogs and cats. It's a huge number, and we're going to change that. What we've seen is a real shift. The pets have become the new baby. Pets are the new baby, plants are the new pet. Somebody said that the other day, and it really resonated with me. But what's happening is millennials and Gen Z are coming up, and they're almost 50% of the pet owners in the US now. And they really think differently about their pets. 58% of them would rather have pets than kids. And with that, they're making decisions, and their decision-making process is very complex. They use more information than any other generation. So when we're able to tell them that we've got this fantastic solution that gives them all the nutrition that their dog needs, can solve all sorts of problems. If you've got a dog with allergies, if you've got a dog with a gut health issue, one of our favorites, if your dog is passing gas all the time, if your dog has really smelly breath, we can solve that. But we can do it with a sustainable alternative. It uses less land, less water, and almost no greenhouse gases. Just to give you a sense of it, if you've got an acre of land and you put chickens on it, at the end of a year, you'll have 265 pounds of protein. But if you put crickets on that land, you'll have 65,000 pounds of protein. It's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. Amazing. I want to dive in here a little bit on like what people don't understand about what you do. And Sarah, I want you to look through a lens of like what don't other investors in sort of food and future of food understand about your investment thesis, and then for the founders, for all of you, I really want to sort of come through the lens of consumers and what they don't understand and what you want them to understand about the products that you're creating.
I think the lens we look through is not the typical CPG food investor. Like I mentioned, we don't have food as a vertical. We are really looking for quantifiable impacts in terms of improving environmental or human health. And so I think maybe what some of the big food investors don't understand is that, or they probably do, but our thesis is that a lot of these big food brands, consumers, especially the millennials and Gen Zs who are, and women, frankly, who are looking maybe another layer or two into what they're eating, that they don't trust these big food brands, right? They don't have insight into their supply chains and their sources, and so many processed things, so many ingredients you don't understand what they are, so many unsustainable things about it, and so they're not trusting those brands. And so there's a big kind of acquisitive opportunity in this space where these smaller brands that have really loyal customers that are doing the right thing, delivering really high quality offerings, they are very valuable to these bigger brands to buy the consumers and that trust, to buy the, the supply chain, to buy just that cleaner thing, which they really are not set up to do because of the ingredients list that they, and the suppliers and the kind of thing that's their infrastructure. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's one of the reasons
there's more
we
pushback
invest.
we can sort of highlight from investors sort of not matching your thesis, or other times that they skipped out on rounds that you've been a part of or led. And
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do come at it from a different way. Like with when Bree was talking about how other investors didn't understand the supply chain, it is hard because looking at comps, like where we're like there are no comps. There's nobody who really gets all the down to the seed, literally. But they're also putting product on the shelf and selling into wholesale. So it's very hard, and so sometimes investors don't, they need to do their math, and if there's no comps, it's like, well, we think this is going to be too big of a lift in terms of educating the market or educating the potential acquirers or whatever about what this is, since it's so different. And I guess we're looking out of where's the value going, where are the issues, and I mean there's so many things that they're addressing. And again, we didn't invest because it's a superfood or because even it's great to the main economy. We invested because it literally takes no water, no land, no preservatives, no fertilizer. It captures nitrogen, it captures carbon, and acidifies the ocean. I mean, it's like such a climate change solution. Same with Jiminy's. We really like that they had the barrier to entry in terms of all the work Ann alluded to of showing, I guess, the USDA and FDA that this was actually able to be pet food, because you're not allowed to just sell an alternative protein
Right.
as pet food.
There's a GRAS dossier, which is generally recognized as safe, that we did.
Yes, and so the other U.S.-based companies are selling treats, that kind of thing, that are cricket-based, but you're the only company that can sell it as actually food. So there's a lovely barrier to entry there.
So are we gonna all try the dog treats today?
Yes, they're
Yeah.
and they're made in a facility that makes human grade. Right.
We'll
so,
get some of those
cheese puffs.
reactions on video. And so for the consumer side, what would you all like? I know there's some really interesting stats on like what you're doing, how you're making it, but I want to know like what you want some of your consumers to know with your product lines right now.
I think one thing that has been really, so some statistics that Sarah gave around venture are even scarier in seafood. The Boston Seafood Show, which is America's biggest seafood show, starts tomorrow, or it's Sunday, and will go through Tuesday. And 98% of them will be white, old men. And they will have fish on some ice. And they'll all be there like, check out my fish, and it's mind-numbing. And the amount of panels that my staff is on, because they're like, shit, we got an equity problem. There are no women. And I'm like, here's 20. Go put them on your panel. And so that's what, this is what with seafood, I think in particular, there's no innovation at all. People are seeing it as a really hopeless category in a lot of ways. But those same people that are hawking fish on ice are also not our target demographic. And when we go to Boston, we don't even exhibit there. They'll say, "Oh, seaweed, is that the stuff that gets wrapped around my ankles?" You talk to anyone that is under 45, that's a woman, even over 45, everyone's like, "Oh, cool, I've been eating seaweed snacks." Costco is the biggest seller of seaweed in the US. It's not Whole Foods. Trader Joe's can't keep those seaweed snacks on the shelf. Nori is everywhere. Sushi is everywhere. You can go to the most desolate place in Maine and still find sushi. When I was growing up, there was none of that. So I think seaweed is not something that is new to a younger consumer, and it's just being smart about how you approach that and just saying, we're not going to have everyone, and that's fine. Too much of the food system has been tailored to those people anyway.
that don't even make the decisions.
I had it 3 times this week. I can't wait to go back to H Mart. So I get it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what we're seeing is people want to make an impact with their food. They know what they want to choose, but they also want it to taste good. And I think that's something that we're starting to try. We just came out with a sea veggie burger that's now in Sprouts around here. Just came out about a month and a half ago. It's at Wegmans, a few others, but something that's just my 5-year-old loves. I keep saying 3. He's grown up 2 years. My 5-year-old and my 7-year-old eat it like crazy. It's just really easy to eat. It tastes great. We'll be coming out with a snack in about 18 months. We have kelp cubes that go in your smoothies in the morning to give you your iodine boost for thyroid function. You know, just ways that make it really easy for people to use, and also just realizing that you're gonna have to ignore a part of the demographics out there.
I'm glad you brought that up because I oftentimes think about how we can sort of reinvent everything from marketing to trade shows to sort of points of access to promoting our products. Like, where do you see the company diversifying like traditional ways to promote seafood and sea products out there?
A lot of it is going to be through other companies that have really big brand presence. So what we use our retail brand for is getting it on the shelf, showing people that it can win awards, that people are excited about it, that we're having high velocity, and then a General Mills comes by and puts some seaweed in their cracker, just 5%, you know, and right now we're talking to Hidden Valley on their ranch dressing. They need a vegan ranch. This is umami. There's all these kind of bigger companies that are like, oh, this seaweed thing actually has some staying power. And so that's how we're going to really get it out to all those 15 and a half aisles is we can do some of that. $9 million is not going to do that. It's going to allow us to be really effective in getting it in other people's products while also supporting our own brand at Atlantic Sea Farms.
And Claire, how are you seeing that as you sort of approach consumers and understand more of like what they're looking for education and sort of dietary or routine changes?
Yeah, I think a big shift that our members and I guess prospective members make is first recognizing that eating better from a nutritional standpoint doesn't always have to start with just eating less. We are typically not our members' first rodeo. They typically come to us with a 5+ year long diet history. These are women who are really educated around nutrition, perhaps overeducated. I envision like thought bubbles above their head with just lots of conflicting information about food. And I think societally we've equated eating nutritiously with being on a diet, when in fact we know that diets have a staggering failure rate of 95% or more, and that they're actually antithetical to health. So bringing in some of that education and really meeting our members where they are, recognizing that their struggles with food are largely not a function of a lack of willpower, and that they've been sold a failing product. Dieting is a $72 billion industry. There's a lot of money to be made by keeping women and all people kind of trapped on this cycle. So that's why I say we break the diet cycle and then build the healthy habits. So that's kind of an important mindset shift for our consumers to make early on in their Flourish journeys.
Do you want to say something, Ann, or?
Sure, yeah. I guess one of the things that we're doing, besides just trying to get the message to the right consumers, whether it's a sustainability message or it's a nutrition message, we're actually working with influencers. And in our case, it's not just, the influencers on, say, TikTok or Instagram. We're working with veterinarians because veterinarians actually influence consumers more than anything. And so we're doing a lot of education with them, and they're leaning in a really wonderful way. The only other thing I'd say is we are very much focused on keeping the messaging positive. One of the things that we've found is when people tell us how they feel about our brand, they say, I feel optimistic because brands like this exist. There's a path forward that is a real path forward where we can make a difference. And so we want to make sure that we stay on that path because we need more optimism in our lives.
I'm glad you brought those the last 2 points up, Claire and Ann. 2 more questions before we open it up to the crowd. How can we tap into our communities, into policies, into some of the educational communities to really look and drive change around some of the like food systems, the policies, the products that we're creating. I think that, oftentimes we are limited in the ways that we creatively look to output faster change, and oftentimes as companies, we don't understand how much we can put on our shoulders in terms of education and really driving not only the adoption of our products, but also some of the broader education within the market. So I just want to understand how you guys are looking at impact of things like policy, education. I know, Bree, we had a good conversation around sort of wealth transfer, wealth structure, policy impact when it comes to ocean farming in the Northeast. I don't know if you want to dive into that, and if anyone has anything to say about policy or education, but I would love for you to share.
Yeah, I think when, I guess something that I didn't realize when I started as CEO of this business is that about 30 to 40% of my time would be on advocacy for ocean farming. I think aquaculture in the 70s, particularly around salmon farming, had a really bad rap. And we may look at kelp and say like, oh, this is so cool, this is so hopeful, or oysters or mussels, but I don't think anyone realizes how little aquaculture we have in the United States. We import something like 93% of all of our seafood, and something like 70% of that is farmed, and none of it's here. And that is for a number of reasons, unfortunately, most of which are based around who owns the sight line to the ocean. It's not people that don't have a lot of money. It's, especially in Maine, it's people who are there for 2 weeks. It's vacation land from Boston and New York, and they have gentrified the coast so horrendously, and they get to decide what's out in front of their front windows. And that is true in Washington, it's true in California, it's true in Oregon. Name your coastal community and try to think of a place where there is not gentrification of the coastline to the extreme. So it's incumbent upon us as consumers to, instead of looking at the ocean as a place that's just kind of this open space, to look at it as a place where there's a lot of hope, and talk about, crickets sound, I'm kind of annoyed that crickets are a little bit more efficient than kelp. That was the first time I heard that statistic, like shucks. But, between oysters.
It's okay, we're helping each other.
But oysters and mussels and seaweed and salmon are some of the most, and finfish in general, farming are some of the most efficient ways to farm protein, and we're gonna need to figure out better ways to feed our population. And we're gonna have to use the ocean, and it's no water, no inputs. With salmon farming, it's getting better and better. We need to diversify out of just salmon. We should all be tired of salmon. But we have to be farming our oceans. Let the wild product where it is. Let's restore ocean, abundance, and let those wild capture fisheries stay, and start farming in a way that we can control, and start feeding the population with something that's not cows, but is protein that is grown with no inputs. And I think that's gonna be a demand from people to stop being controlled by rich people who want a sight line onto open water. And it's as simple as that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think it's not one solution, it's
Yeah.
many solutions, and it's us making better choices as we go, because we can talk with our pocketbook. Let's make a better choice when a better choice is available.
And just load up on one or two questions. I'm going to ask one more, so we have about 6 minutes left. But I want to start with you, Sarah. What really excites you about the future of food? What are you investing in, and where are you really seeing the market going in the next few quarters and years?
Well, what they just said in terms of consumers really being more advocates of changing the dynamic. I also think it's really interesting being here in Austin with the Dell Medical School, being really focused on value-based care, and even the home of the Whole Foods headquarters, and how there's a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, there's a growing amount of knowledge about how much lifestyle factors and nutrition influences health, and that it's actually much less expensive to solve, and so healthcare hopefully will start being truly healthcare versus sick care in that dimension. We're seeing that here locally, but in the investment opportunities as well.
What are the things exciting you in the coming quarters? You can talk about your companies or just generally the market.
I guess kind of blending this question and the last one, and also Sarah's response. I can speak a little bit to current, I guess, policies that exist that make getting nutrition counseling so much more accessible. I think people don't know that in many cases, nutrition counseling is covered under your HSA or FSA account. So that is can be a great money saver. This is not something that's only accessible to the rich people who have houses on Maine, on the coast of Maine. And there's also exciting legislature under the Affordable Care Act that makes nutrition counseling available at little to no cost for anyone who has or is at risk of a chronic condition. So to your point, Sarah, it's exciting to see nutrition, certainly again, my background as a registered dietitian, it's exciting to see nutrition being taken a little bit more seriously in terms of its power as a preventative tool in our kind of set of healthcare tools.
I think for me, it's the fact that people really want to make climate impact through their food. And that's something that, especially young people, and I think people are really showing a lot of advocacy through those choices. We have to make that food more affordable. And I think, our policy system makes it so that farmers are poorer, producing less nutrient-dense food and making people sicker. And there's a lot of work to be done there in Washington, but a lot of work that also needs to be driven by the general public and making statements around climate future foods, because we got to be better.
Quickly, in the crowd, how many farmers are in here? Not enough. All right, so we'll invite more. We got to tweet some farmers today, like. But any questions from the crowd? We can dive in right here. Thanks for putting your hand up.
Hi, my name is Anna Claire Eddington. I'm the farmer turned founder.
All right, all right.
I own Overnight Chai. It's a beverage company based in Austin. We focus a lot on ethics, sustainable sourcing, knowing our farmers, and only investing in non-bullshit packaging, basically. So this question is for both brand owners and for you as an investor. I agree with everything you're saying, and it all hits home. I agree with everything you're saying. You're just shout. I'll just shout. Yeah, it's a prop, guys. Here we are. But my question for you is about the time in between now and when consumer behavior and legislation changes enough that it makes it financially feasible to buy these better for you, better for the planet brands. Because that's all of it. Everything you're saying is right, but the overwhelming majority of people don't have a house in Maine and aren't accessing these better for you products.
I can speak to that actually. Like I mentioned, we really touch on the psychology of eating behavior quite a bit, and one pattern we see is all or nothing thinking. So I'm either totally all in on sustainability, I'm buying all organic or regenerative or X, Y, and Z, or I'm driving through the fast food line, Pop-Tarts, whatever. And there's so much in between, and a little bit is better than nothing. And so that's again where the psychology of behavior change comes in, where we have to like really rewire the way that we think about the choices that we make and recognize, oh, I'm falling into that same pattern. I'm gonna buy this, beautiful dozen eggs from a farmer, and maybe everything else is just gonna be from a conventional grocer, and that's okay.
We actually, we talk about this a lot because it is expensive at this point to produce our products. We're working actively to bring the costs down, but in the meantime, we talk about things like rotational diets. You can work this in. It's like Meatless Monday for a human, right? So there's ways to work it in that's not going to break the bank, and that's what we need to start seeing people do.
I want to quickly say though, like, I don't think that we should put it all on the behavior of consumers to change these and like find ways to afford things. We definitely need to sort of find ways to break systems, to invest in entrepreneurs, especially as our government has scaled down R&D dollars over the last 70 years, and we need to invest in farmers to really drive biodiversity and nutrient-dense foods. I remember you said that, Bree, as a sort of the lack of nutrient density in the foods now, especially as they have halved over the past century. And so I'm so thankful that you brought that up, because affordability and accessibility is really not something that's central to this conversation, especially as we find ways to diversify, the future of food and sort of communities like this. So thank you for that. We don't have that much more time, but I wanted to say thank you, Sarah and Bree and Claire, for sharing your impact and sort of the vision that you have around your companies and what you've done thus far and what you'll continue to do. And thank you for finding ways to invest in complex companies that are really changing and breaking the mold in the future of food. And thank you for all of you for joining our first panel, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.